Hey Vladan. So
Hello,
this
hello.
this time we're gonna try to be more structured. We even made an agenda, which is a good thing for us, I guess, because we like to talk and we're kind of time limited. So I think both you and I wanted to talk a little bit about the Buffalo shooting and some interesting things about it. I think probably from different perspectives, I would guess. So you want to start with that?
Yeah, sure. You wanna give your own first or
Um, I mean, it's yet another shooting that this time happened, I think, in a very transparent way. So that would be a good thing, a silver lining, of course. Of course, it's a tragedy that people died. But this shooter seems to be very transparent in terms of his motivations and his thinking and his philosophy, if you can call it that. So I think that's useful so that we can understand how these people think and possibly how we can prevent that. I think what is not useful is the usual grandstanding around this that's happening very predictably from both sides. And people trying to make this into, something that they want to push forward instead of what it actually is. And I think the whole great replacement thing probably deserves some talking about. And I feel that people are making this way bigger than it is. That would be my personal take on it. But we can expand on that. Maybe you want to go ahead and just cover it from kind of your perspective.
well, I think I would disagree about it.
I
Uh,
didn't really state any positions, but that's okay.
well, you said that you think that people are making it bigger than it actually is.
Hmm.
Um, I would say that's questionable because it's part of it's now becoming a part of a trend. Body count may be relatively limited, so I believe it was 8 or 10 people that get killed, but it's again, um, it's now a trend that's becoming apparent. That, for example, this shooter tried to emulate the Christchurch one,
Yeah,
and also
from New Zealand, right? Yeah.
we had yeah in New Zealand, and then we had Brodek, and there were some others which escape me right now, but. The big part of the problem is that it's the underlying, let's say, ideology that is taking shape is being mainstreamed, right? And that's what makes it a big problem. Yes, there'll always be, of course, groups, cults, different organizations trying to prey on, impressionable, isolated young people with a smaller or greater degree of success. ISIS did this, I would say, fairly successfully
Yeah, lonely
before.
young
Um,
people who need a purpose, right?
yeah, it's usually people who are for one reason or another feel isolated from their immediate environment, and that makes them an easy prey. Um, whether they are, former criminals, or just there can be a different number of different backgrounds, but that seems to be the common theme, right? So they have some sense of detachment, right? And they are looking to
Hmm.
connect to something, and and these
My camera just
ideologies
switched. I'm
slash
sorry.
cults is sorry.
My camera just switched to another one, so let me just move it. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So like I was saying, yes, there will always be um certain bodies, certain phenomena, like I said, whether it's some sort of a cult or an organization
Hmm.
that will be looking to recruit people. Uh, but the biggest problem for me here is that this this particular ideology or the theory of white replacement is being largely mainstreamed. Um, it's actually being broadcast now through mainstream media, right? And therefore, the reach uh, would be exponentially greater, right? Now, whether the effect, what the, I think it's best if I stop there and then we can discuss this in more detail because I have some additional thoughts about, um, let's say the potential for the damage. But I think the problem does exist and it's quite significant.
Yeah, so let me try and recap what you just said. I hard disagree on the great replacement thing because I don't think that's mainstream at all. I think there are concentric circles, right? So there are people who really believe this stuff, which is super crazy. If you actually read about it, the theory, it doesn't make any sense. It's super racist. Basically, the theory is that people want to replace, well, Democrats, right? Want to replace generally white people or conservative people or Americans or whatever, however you want to define them. They want to replace them with black and brown people who will, for whatever reason, vote Democrat, which is not true, right? The problem with the theory is that it doesn't work because those people are conservative, actually, socially at least. So they don't actually reliably vote Democrat, especially Latinos. So the theory is kooky. The theory doesn't really work, and that is the core belief, right? And then, just like the Islamists and jihadis and religious zealots, I guess other religions too, you have these concentric circles, right? You have this core, which is super crazy. And I think this guy belongs to the core. I don't think that core is large at all. And then you have a concentric circle. You have people who are perhaps racist, right? Who probably believe those things, but wouldn't go out and shoot people, right? And then you have people who are a very large circle, a huge circle, people who are just legitimately concerned about immigration and immigration policy and the United States losing its cultural values, and or they have social beliefs that they don't want to be overturned. They want to remain in the majority, basically, right? So this does overlap with conservatives, but I don't think it's as large as that. I think Tucker Carlson, for example, appeals to the larger circle, and he has way more supporters than the actual great replacement theory. And I saw him denounce this because of course he would, right? But I think he's genuine about that. I don't think he believes this stuff. I think this stuff is just out there. What I guess you're saying is that this is kind of a path going towards that, which just radicalizes you more and more, just like Islamists and jihadis. There's probably a conversation to be had there, but I think that what Democrats are trying to say is that this was caused by people who are talking about this, like Tucker Carlson, like Trump, of course. I don't think so. I don't think it is. I think these people are just on the spectrum, and they are way, far from this guy in terms of beliefs. So that's my take.
So I would disagree with you that, well, not actually disagree, maybe just correct you. So you said that Tucker Carlson doesn't believe in the great replacement theory. I
Yeah.
would say that he doesn't believe in 95% of what he says on air. Anyways, I think he's just basically being a propagandist. He's working for his own
Oh, it
benefit,
does. Yeah.
and
Does
sorry,
have a
and
job.
he's basically he's feeding his audience what they want to hear, and that's all he really cares about. And um, maybe some long-term plans, but that's a different story.
Yeah,
But
he
like I
did
was
used to be
saying,
a regular Republican before, right? When he was wearing the bow tie and all that. So yeah,
yeah, he was the.
yeah, it was
I
much
mean,
more
he still is.
classic in terms of. Yeah.
He's an heir to frozen food industry. He's about as far from your regular Joe as you can almost possibly get.
Sure.
However, he's the main purveyor of populism in America, along with another guy who's even further away from your regular Joe, and I mean the Golden Throne, Don. So yeah, paradoxical, I know. But anyways, just to circle back, so Tucker basically has one of the largest platforms,
I mean, Jimmy Dore is a millionaire
largest
on the
mainstream.
left, so and
Sorry?
I mean, Jimmy Dore is a millionaire. Even he's an internet celebrity, basically, right? Even he is a millionaire, and people like people like Rachel Maddow and people on MSNBC, they're all way out there. So yeah, it's pretty much all the elite. So yeah, Bill O'Reilly before, I think his time slot was the one that Tucker replaced, right? And he was super elite. So although he did a good job in pretending he was dumb, which I guess being
Mm.
dumb in some ways probably helped. But yeah,
Tide goes in, tide goes out. How does that
yeah, that
go?
was the Dawkins interview. Yeah, I remember that one. You
Can't
can't
explain
explain
that.
that. Yeah, that's a meme.
Uh,
That's a good one.
Um, but anyways, like I was saying, so the larger problem is that basically this theory is demonstrably wrong, obviously, but it's deeply rooted in basically in racism, right? And there are
Yeah,
several elements. I think there's an element of like a Jewish conspiracy or some sort of
yeah.
global
The Jews.
conspiracy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's racist on multiple levels.
Hmm.
Um, problematic on multiple levels, and we have a person who's like as smack in the middle of American mainstream, basically repeatedly making references to it and repeating the ideas that
Yeah.
this theory promotes, right? So
Hmm.
that's the problem. He doesn't have to be causally connected to the kid that did the mass shooting. It doesn't really matter, right? It's for the same. Uh, I'm trying to dodge the Poe's law here, but it's getting kind of difficult. But like I said, I think just you don't really need to establish causality between or accuse Tucker Carlson of being directly responsible. I think it's enough to just point out that, hey, yeah, like, um, how would I word this? That's the problem. I guess that's the place where we might be stumbling. And also, I'm sorry, but I'm being distracted by my progeny
That's
enjoying
okay.
Shrek
My
as we
camera
speak.
died, so it's a good day to do this. We're okay. We're doing great.
Yeah, classic.
I mean, by the same logic, you could blame Bernie for the guy who shot people because of who was a Bernie supporter, right? That also happened, and that same logic could be applied there because Bernie was on the spectrum. The crazy communist extremists are on the same spectrum, right? They're on that spectrum, so you could draw the same analogy, right?
Today, or is Bernie making any claims that could be interpreted as targeting any kind of a racial group in America?
No, but neither is Tucker. Tucker's very
Well,
careful
great.
not to.
Mm, I would say that he's being fairly overt. Um, he's literally saying to the camera, "They are, they are going to replace you." If I remember correctly, I don't know. Maybe something has changed.
Yeah,
I
but
don't.
he's talking in
I haven't
the
watched him regularly.
sure, but I mean, he's right about that. People coming in are taking the low paying jobs. That's a fact of immigration. I think nobody serious would dispute that if you let immigrants in, legally or illegally, it doesn't really matter. Um, it matters in a way, but doesn't really matter for the end result. You screw the low income people, right? They get benefits from they can they would they can get benefits from the government and from the overall development that happens, right? That would be the libertarian answer to that, right? But nobody argues that those people will not take the jobs of low income and low skill labor, right? That is something that happens. You cannot talk about that, but that is a fact, right?
Well, that's, I think, the economic aspect of it is a
Yeah,
separate issue, probably.
but that's what he's talking
I think
about. I
is
mean, yeah, I don't think he's talking
sorry.
about, but that's what he's talking about. He's not talking about a lot of
No,
cultural
no, no,
issues.
no, 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 no. Sorry, but hard disagree this time on my end. He is not talking about economics primarily. He's running identity politics. That's identity politics is again a large part of the programming of all of these shows. Is their bread and butter. Republicans for a long time now have not had any kind of a coherent strategy to appeal to the voting base other than engaging in hardcore identity politics. That's how they mobilize. Uh, Part
Republicans
of the
mobilize.
reason.
I mean, Democrats are. Biden is the top identity poll person in the U.S. I mean, can you maybe be more specific? Maybe I don't understand what you mean. Republicans
How is
seem to be all
Biden
about
identity?
individuals and all about meritocracy and all about that, at least nominally, right? But what kind of identity? If anybody's talking about identity politics, it's Biden who's selecting people because they're black and because of their gender or whatever. That would be the definition of it, right? And if anything, they are closer to this guy, the shooter, than Republicans, right? Republicans are talking about different things. They're talking about
They're
it's
talking
more about
about the
ideas.
liberals ruining America with their identity politics. Like
Yeah,
it's the same
sure.
thing, just from it's like a mirror image. However, like I said, I feel on the right that this is being leveraged in a rather cynical way, because let's say on the left, uh, it's part of the progressive agenda, which also includes bettering or trying to improve the living of all Americans, right? And the let's say minority politics and so on is a subset of that greater goal. Whereas on the right, we have aggressive policies which are aimed at basically scoring some sort of a benefit with their corporate donors. With the, I mean, this happens, of course, on the left as well.
Yeah,
Let's
this
be
is
honest.
pretty much universal.
No,
I was gonna say,
no, no,
yeah.
no. Of course, yeah, of course, I know that.
Everybody likes money.
I'm just saying that these are two like very different ideologies, obviously, and I think logically, engaging in identitarian politics in on the left, it's just a subset, right? It's not the main goal. It's like the part of a greater whole. Whereas on the right, engagement in identitarian politics is kind of a cynical tool to distract from the fact that they are failing to address and fix a bunch of problems in the American societies, and therefore look at this Mexican taking your job, while I give a huge, huge tax cut to all of the richest people in the country who just keep getting richer and richer basically by the second. So, yeah.
Um, Again, identity politics are clearly done by Democrats. I can't think of any examples except maybe religion, but that wouldn't be identity politics. Identity is by definition something you can't really change. And Democrats are all about that, right? They're all about immutable identities that are kind of creeping, and creeping out and becoming more and more. Everything is an identity now. The fact that you're overweight can be an identity or whatever, right? So that's kind of on the left. I mean, identity politics in particular is kind of a left thing. I agree that a lot of the right seems to be these days just triggering the libs without any kind of other philosophy, just because the libs are so triggerable. So it's super, fun to do that. And I understand why many people do it.
Agree there as well.
Yeah,
I would
but you
disagree
can,
there as well.
Sure. I mean, you could
I can
disagree, but
elaborate if you want.
there's a lot of people who seem to be just enjoying that. And if you watched even the politicians, they love to do that as well.
Well, as a liberal myself, I will tell you that they are basically amusing themselves with all the memes
Oh,
that
sure,
they
yeah,
then imagine some liberal reacting to, right?
sure.
That's the core of the humor. The joke is not funny in and of itself. It's about it provoking the reaction. And
Yeah,
at
it's
this
just
point,
making people mad. Yeah, it's not even
yes,
a
at this
joke.
point, we have. I mean, okay, I cannot speak for all people. I'm not part of any, even a small community, let alone. So, and there is no like an organization of liberals that I can reference or poll or. But from my own
Mhm.
perspective, I've seen all of this is just boring. You're just talking to yourselves, like these jokes that you are laughing at. Nobody's mad. Nobody cares. We've seen it all before, guys. You're just boring.
I mean,
And this is the stuff
okay.
that's basically people are just riling themselves up with this.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously not true. If you take a look at the Elon Musk's Twitter stuff, you'll see that people went batshit crazy about it. So it was not imagined. It's those check
Twitter,
marks who
yes.
went crazy
Okay,
about
so are
it.
we talking about Twitter users or Reddit users or
Yeah,
society?
yeah. We're talking about no. But we're not talking about real people. We're talking about people online, of course. Yeah,
Yes.
because real people don't really care. Yeah, offline. I mean,
Yes. Okay. So this is a very important distinction.
yeah. We're
Tucker
talking
is
about
speaking.
blue check marks, TikTok libs, people like that. Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Tucker is speaking to the real people,
yeah.
and he's pointing out to this tiny minority and saying, "Look what they are doing," and
Hmm.
he does this night after night after night after night.
Sure.
And it's basically this is what all of them are like,
Yeah, but that's
right?
because the Democrat Party is like that. The Democratic Party is trying to appeal to those people. They're talking about birding people, and nobody talks like that, right? Nobody talks like that at all. I don't have anything against people expressing their gender any way they like, but nobody talks like that. People talk like Democrats talk like that in Congress, right? So
Mm.
it's the party is trying to appeal to those people because those people have disproportionately large influence, right? It's it's some of them are batshit crazy, right? Nobody listens to them. Still, they have this influence, right? So that's the whole. You're totally right. It's not real people. Real people don't really care about those things. But if you look at, we're talking about online stuff for sure. And again, I'm having trouble finding an example of identity politics from the Republican side or from the conservative side at all. I think the whole conservative thing is just to preserve the values. They would like to keep America the way it is. They would like to keep the values, not necessarily the color. I think most people would be
Preserve the
totally
identity of America.
the values. It's not about the identity that
No,
is
it's the
immutable.
identity.
No, it's
What
not.
values are they talking about? Like what
Free
are the values
liberty,
that they are
freedom,
talking?
freedom of speech,
No, no,
Second
no.
Amendment,
What is
things like
about
that.
freedom?
Yeah.
What about freedom of movement? What about uh
What about
freedom
freedom of
from
movement?
hmm?
What about freedom of
Well, what
movement?
about limitations that they keep trying to impose on movement of people across the border?
Well, the freedom of movement doesn't
Beyond
apply
what
to
people would need.
national borders. It applies to states. It means you can leave the state and live somewhere else if you don't like the state, which is part of the federalism, which is a cool thing. I think that's a
Sure,
great,
but
great value.
um,
They want to keep the other people out there because they have different values, not because they're black or brown or whatever. They're afraid that these people will come in, and because they're living in more socialist countries, they'll turn America more socialist. That's not hard to understand. It's not about identity, it's about the system itself. And I can totally understand that. I come from Bosnia, okay? Bosnian people are terrible voters. First of all, they don't vote. Second, they don't follow the politics. They don't care about the government. They don't understand how the government is supposed to work because they had ages of socialism and stuff. Let those people decide how the country should be. I mean, they're going to destroy a country, right? If you have too many of those people, if you let too many people from, I don't know, Muslim countries who really believe that stuff, they're going to make America Muslim. That's going to happen eventually, right? That's something that people are openly talking about, right? In the radical Islam. So, I mean, that's real. It's way over exaggerated, of course, it's not going to happen, of course, but that is what the people are talking about. They're not talking about, I think the percentage of people who are actually
Okay, okay,
racist
wait, I need to
are
interrupt you
super
right
low.
here.
Mhm.
I need to interrupt you. So
Sure.
yes, when you are speaking about preserving these values and you're saying that, okay, all I'm doing now is, I'm saying all of these things because I want to preserve the identity, da da da, and you
Not
don't
the
touch
identity.
any of the numbers.
It's not the identity, it's about the ideas.
Okay, let's say we want to preserve our values, but you don't attach any actual numbers, right? With the rates of immigration, like what kind of a time span are we even looking at? Like these people are basically acting as though this is like an overnight thing, right? That
Mhm.
this kind
Yeah.
of breakdown in values is happening, like we're already living in some kind of a new um, escape from New York
Mhm.
environment, blah blah blah.
That's a good movie.
It's
Hey,
not.
nice reference. Okay.
Yes, Kurt Russell.
Oh.
Anyways, it's not, and that's where the identity politics come in, because if this was being done or said to counter an actual phenomenon that is actually happening,
Mhm.
then sure. But the thing is, it's not really, it's being hugely overblown. And the only conclusion that can be drawn out of that is that it's being basically cynically abused. You're talking about values, but what you're selling is actual identity politics.
Yeah, I just don't see the jump. I can understand the overblown part, which it is, definitely. Because it's news, right? And because he wants people to, I mean, Tucker wants people to watch him, right? That's his incentive. So, of course, he's gonna, tell you that things are terrible. They're coming for your guns. They're coming for your whatever freedom. That's just, that's just
Okay,
something.
so
That's
how
the
how does that preserve anybody's values or freedoms by drumming up this kind of
I
fear,
don't
basically?
think
Because this
I
is
don't
fear
think Tucker has
more
that
than
goal
any
in
other purpose.
mind. Tucker doesn't have that goal in mind. I think you misunderstood what I was saying. I was talking about the people who are watching, right? The people who are watching.
Yeah, they believe. I
Tucker wants
can
people to
sure.
watch. He wants ratings. He doesn't want anything else. I don't
Mhm.
think he has any other motivation past that. He's browsing the news. He's seeing, oh, the libs are, doing this and they want this and they want to do this and they want to take this from you. And that's his whole shtick. And it resonates
Okay,
because people are afraid. So he's just playing on that fear, I think. I don't think he's a
okay.
force for
Let
good,
me put it
but yeah.
this. Let me put it a different way.
Mhm.
If peop- if you are convincing a large section of the population that allowing for example a passing transgender person to use a bathroom that matches with their new, let's say, with how they identify,
Mhm.
as some kind of a breakdown in social values and norms and basically the end of America as it is, I don't think that what you are doing is engaging in politics that are based in values. I think that because you are overblowing this issue to such a ridiculous extent, you are actually engaging in identity politics. Instead, you're just packaging it up as, you know, I'm all about values, but you're not. You basically hate gays or transgender people or whatever. Pick a minority. Basically, pick on anybody who the majority can pick on, and this is what you're doing. You're telling them now, pick on this person because they are out to get you. But in reality, they cannot. Even with the entire Democratic Party, let's say, mobilized behind them, they still cannot, right? Which it isn't.
Sure. Um, I don't think LGBTQ anything that he has a special relationship to, and he hates them. I don't think most conservatives hate LGBTQ at all. I think they just hate the process around it and the attention that's being brought to them by mostly Republicans. I mean, yeah, sure. Um,
Sure. All I'm
it's
saying is
not
that,
true.
if
There
you're
is an overblown response to that in the UK. Um, you can see the whole gender neutral bathrooms and stuff like that being. We can talk about that. That's a separate subject, I guess. You can you can look that up. It's an interesting subject, I think, to read. But it's not something that's it's not identity politics in the way that okay, we hate gays. No, it's about the Democratic Party being perceived to force this worldview on other people on the federal level. If this would be just California, that would be fine. The problem is when they want to force states who, in large majorities, don't feel that that should be that way, right? From the top, basically forcing certain beliefs upon people. And again, that's about beliefs, right? If states want to, I mean, an ideal um, Republican view, if states want to live
I
in,
actually say it's not
LGBTQ
about
hell,
this.
it's going to be okay
No, no,
because they can live there. But it's not okay to use the federal government to
no.
force other states to
Again,
do that.
hard disagree. Hard disagree. You said, it's based on what, beliefs,
Sure.
or
I mean, it's
no? I would
religious
say
in
that
this
it's
case.
actually
If we're talking
right,
about LGBTQ, it's just religious beliefs. Yeah.
right. But what the left is pushing is, how did you frame it? Like ideology or something?
Well,
I thought I picked up something.
the left
Yeah.
is perceived to be pushing things like CRT and stuff. Yeah, which go against the beliefs of the
I
majority of
think
people in those
CRT is
states.
another red herring. These are all, that's my whole point. These are all a string of huge red herrings which are just distracting people from
Sure.
the actual issues that actually affect their lives.
Hmm.
They're drumming up hatred against these groups, perhaps not as a primary goal, but as a secondary for sure, right? As a secondary effect of this kind of media manipulation, this is what is happening, right? And I think the fact that this is being cynically exploited and used by various media personalities and politicians fits with my definition of them basically engaging yet again in identity politics. The thing is, they don't really actually believe in that what they are saying, right? That the values themselves are somehow endangered. Instead, they are
Who is they?
targeting the
Is
other,
they the people or people like
the
Tucker?
right-wing pundits, politicians,
Oh, okay.
journalists,
Yeah.
hosts, so on.
Yeah, I don't have. They have. I don't
Uh,
think they have a lot of beliefs. Yeah.
it's not about values. It's basically what it is about is identifying the other and then basically blaming them for whatever problems you, real or not, real or just perceived, in order to drum up support within your base, right? And that's pretty much all there is, and that's why it's identity politics. Whereas, on the other hand, when the left engage, or I would hope, I know there's lots of crazy people, there's lots of insane stuff that gets posted that comes out of the left, but I would like to believe that the majority feels that, these um, rights or goals or whatever are simply part of a larger humanistic ideology, overarching ideology, right? So not um it's like, what I'm trying to say is that it logically fits closer. It makes sense that if your goal is to make things better for everybody, that you would have to pay special attention to minority groups who are not with not equal for this reason or another, and therefore you need to bring them up to the same level that whatever the median is. Whereas what the right is doing is actually pointing at these same minority groups and making them the enemy, right?
No,
And
I mean, you can say
that's
that, but that's not true. That's not what's happening. What's happening on the left is the equity thing, right? So Joe Biden will say, I'm going to appoint a black woman to be whatever, right? The vice president, judge, the Supreme Justice, or whatever. That doesn't really, that doesn't really click with me at all. I mean, those things should be a meritocracy. Best people should, if black women are,
meritocracy doesn't exist in America.
um, I would also disagree, but I think
I mean,
that you can appoint people, based on their, qualifications or whatever. Nobody would care if they're black or Asian or whatever. If anything, these things don't really work in practice, and you can see this thing happening in California, where people voted out the in the one of the schools in California. They basically kind of pushed Asian people down because they were so good academically to let black students in, which is not fair by any imagination, by any kind of definition of justice that you can imagine, right? But that's what equity gets you, right? You get poorly qualified
that's
people
a
just
side
because
effect.
of their identity, which is immutable, and people who are performing well, in this case Asians, right? Not even white people, they get pushed down.
Sure,
Yeah.
I understand. It's a side effect basically of a fix that's not ideal, which doesn't mean that the issue that the fix is there to try and remedy doesn't exist in the first place. And it also doesn't mean that the fix cannot be changed further, improved, so on, modified, I don't know, fixed somehow, right? So
Yeah, just
it's
fire
like you're saying,
the board.
sorry?
Just fired the board like they did, right? The parents just organized and just fired the board who did this. So the school
I
board.
mean,
So
there is a number of things that can be done. I don't know about that particular case, but my point is, yes, people are trying, yes, mistakes are being made, but what's the alternative? Let's just pretend that nothing is wrong, that nothing happened, that there wasn't this I mean, I guess for Americans it's all of us are human. We when we live with something long enough, we start to accept it as a just a fact of life. But if you look at it as an outsider, I mean, the history of black people in America is horrifying, like truly horrifying.
sure,
And
but
the right
yeah.
is intent on just plugging their ears and saying, "Nope, we fixed all of that long time ago. No problem, nothing to do now." It's ridiculous.
I mean,
This is very recent history.
sure, but that's not actionable. The fact that this happened ages ago, the fact that these people haven't accumulated wealth the same way that white people have, which is one of the, if you want to call, if you want to say structural racism, okay, I would agree with you that yeah, it was an unfair playing field, right? If you start from scratch, it is kind of fair, right? For, let's say, poor white people and poor black people starting from scratch don't really have that much of a difference. I mean, poor,
Would disagree again.
rich black people, rich white people, not much of a difference. You have plenty
Rich,
of black
yes.
people.
Poor, no.
Yeah. Tell that
Rich, the
to
rich,
somebody
I
in
agree.
Appalachia who doesn't have it doesn't tell them that they're privileged, right? To tell people who live in trailers that they're privileged and that they should apologize for their ancestors doing bad things.
Nobody, well, the only people who are saying that to these people are the Republicans. Nobody on the left is saying that, right? This is
I'm
another Republican talking point. And again, freaking identity politics. Again. I mean,
But how is it identity politics? I'm addressing a democratic talking point, which is if you're white, which is an identity, right? That then
nobody
you
said
are
because
privileged by just by the
no,
fact that you were born white. That would be the fundamental
um,
thing. What I'm talking about is an economic class, and what I'm saying is both of them are screwed. The whites and blacks are screwed the same way
of course,
because they're
but
poor.
blacks are screwed just a little bit more. Like, okay, if you even out the playing field, um, if you, I mean, what you were just explaining was basically starting from zero, from scratch. The black would still
Yeah,
be behind, even if, that's why I said,
they
yes,
would
if you
be.
compare a black
How would
man
they be?
who's rich and a white man who's rich, not so much difference. They already are way above. But if they're starting from the bottom, the white man will have slightly better outcomes
Do you have
than a
any
black person.
like data to support this? Because if I'm black and I'm poor and I want to
Mhm.
become middle class, right? And if I'm white and poor and want to become middle class, I'll go to a school and I'm gonna say, "Hey, I'm black. Do you guys have any programs that support, minorities and stuff?" They'll tell me, "Sure, come in. I know you're not going to perform well because you're poor and blah, blah, blah. You didn't have a chance to learn, but you're oppressed. So here is a program that's going to support you. Here's some money and stuff. If I'm black, I'm going to get jack shit. I'm not going to get anything. I'm sorry, if I'm white, I'm not going to get anything at all. They'll say just, screw you, go back to your, shithole part of the country, you know, keep screwing your cousin. That's what they'll tell me, and I'll go back there and I'm gonna continue playing my banjo, and that's gonna be it. That's what's gonna happen.
Sure.
So I would argue that starting from scratch would be even easier for a black person today because of the equity, because of the affirmative action, because of all these things. So
Okay, well, assuming that the person lives in a place where all of these programs are actually happening, but they may not be, they don't even know that these things exist that for them to take advantage of, right?
well, sure, yeah.
Even that is conditioned on them being in some sort of environment, in some sort of a family, having access to some sort of services,
I mean,
right?
typically black people live in urban areas, right, where they have access to all of this stuff and they're bombarded by information. Whereas white people live in shitholes, right? Poor white people live in rural areas where they don't have access. So thank you for proving my point. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, yes, and then we reach a phase of employment, and
Mhm.
um, you submit your job application, and you get rejected just because your name sounds black.
There is a bias, sure, but that depends on what you apply to and which companies you want to apply to. There's plenty of companies doing equity stuff. So I don't
Maybe
think
something
it's.
has changed since that research was done,
Mhm.
but I don't remember what year that research was done, but
Oh, it was a
it
while
wasn't
ago. Yeah.
that far.
Mhm.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago, right?
Yeah, but we're talking
So,
about middle class, I think. So I don't think there would be a large bias. The more qualified you are, the less of a I think a bias would be. I think those people who were talking. The study was addressing jobs like McDonald's and stuff like that. So I think there's a part. We're not talking about that. We're talking about somebody rising up to the level of middle class. I think it's my. I would argue. I have done zero research for this, so the facts could prove me wrong. But I would argue it's probably easier to do that if you're black. If you really want to do it, I'm not saying that the environment won't push you down. They will, but so will so will they with the white guy. So. I
yeah,
propose switching subjects because I think we're gonna stay
yeah,
here forever talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
that.
We got totally sidetracked. So
Yeah,
sorry if anybody's watching this and being very bored. Yeah,
yeah, we're
we
talking
went
about the
somewhere else.
whole different thing. So just a little bit of updates from Ukraine. Things are a little bit slowing down there. Ukraine is gaining territory a little bit. They've recently reached the borders of Russia administrative borders, And they are basically pushing forward and slowly taking territory from the Russians. Russians are trying to focus the efforts and take territory back. And one interesting thing I think is that has happened recently, which is the Azovstal prisoner exchange, which basically is a surrender, right? Ukraine doesn't call it that, but basically the people there basically surrendered, right? And they will be presumably exchanged, but that's not a guarantee, I think, from Russia. The Russians.
About that.
I'm sorry.
I saw a little bit of the news.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if there was some sort of an arrangement at a higher level about the
Yes.
surrender of Azovstal?
Yeah. There was there is an agreement that's being kept secret. The Ukrainians are asking everybody to not talk about it, which I think, sorry, Ukrainians, but basically the deal is for them to surrender and to be taken from Azovstal. There are videos of buses taking them away to hospitals and stuff, and they're supposed to be exchanged then for Russian prisoners of war. So Russians hate this. The reactions from patriotic Russian circles are disbelief, shock. There are rumors about the Donbass fighters from Donbass being like kicked out of hospital beds in order to take care of the Azov fighters. So that's very interesting. And people who are super pro Donbass and people who are very, very, patriotically pro Russian are starting to question Putin openly. So you can now see if you watch their state channels, you will see people who are questioning, not very directly, but questioning the decision making, saying, I don't understand what we're doing. I don't understand what the strategy is. Probably people who are leading this know what they're doing. This is a direct quote. I was watching a video today. So
Yeah, not sounding convinced.
It's kind of moving into the direction of what the hell is going on, and sure, we need to do this, but it seems like we're not making progress and we need to understand what's going on. And then there are calls, of course, for even more totalitarian measures. People are openly criticizing democracy. I mean, this happened before, of course, but right now there are open calls for an authoritarian regime, kind of changes in the constitution, things like that. So it's all going very great for for Russia, I think. And the problem is, I think you can't really bullshit people anymore that any goals have been achieved, because they haven't, right? They haven't been able to achieve. There was talk of phase one, and then that was according to plan, and then we'll retreat, and then there's phase two, and now it's a month, I guess, and literally nothing has been achieved of any strategical importance. All of the gains are strictly tactical. There was a funny situation where they took a village, and then because Ukrainians have like 5,000 drones in the air at all times, they can see everything that's happening. So the elite troops left, the reservists came in, and of course the Ukrainians kicked them out immediately because they can see who it is. They can even understand which soldiers are where. They understand absolutely everything. It's completely it's like playing with an open map and being able to see what's going on. Russians have very, very little coverage in that area. So it's really not looking great. It's still possible that Russia will achieve some objectives, but it's not looking great at all. And this Azovstal thing, I think, is not going to be not going to have an impact overall. I think these people will probably be treated as heroes in Ukraine. And if Russia does something that's less than good with them, I don't think that's going to go well either. So that's pretty much what's going on. So I think Ukraine is on track of retaking territory by, my guess would be end of year. I'm not sure if that would include Crimea, but definitely Donbass. I mean, Ukraine could go on into Russia right now, although that would be extremely stupid, but they could. I mean, they're on the border and they could continue moving forward. They've been trying to bomb some strategic targets in Russia. Some drones were down recently, so yeah. And of course, the weapons are pouring in. Brimstone missiles. The Lend-Lease is going to go into full effect really soon. It hasn't even gone into effect yet, so it's going to be pretty overwhelmingly a bad situation for Russia as the time goes forward.
Yeah.
Um,
Actually, Ukraine now basically won the Battle of Kharkiv, right?
yeah. The Russians retreated from there, a while ago. So it's not going to be. People are coming back. There are traffic jams coming back in.
So
So
this is basically the second major victory of the war for Ukraine.
I wouldn't call it major.
Mm.
I wouldn't call it major. Kharkiv was under a threat, but it's still kind of under a threat. It's not as decisive as Kiev. Kiev was just a huge distance, right? And then they went back. This is a much smaller distance. So in war, you can still lose territory pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
But I don't see how. The only dramatic thing that Russia can do now is just general mobilization. But Ukraine can also mobilize, right? Ukraine can mobilize a million people really easily. And, in wars, it's not about professional army and recruits, conscripts. It's not really about that. People talk. There's this myth people keep talking about that. Professional soldiers are by definition better soldiers than conscripts. That's not necessarily true. With good equipment, with adequate training, basic training, if people are super motivated, and they are in Ukraine, right? Because they're protecting, whether you buy the propaganda or not, it doesn't really matter, but they do, and that's what matters. They're gonna beat Russians every time. So the only way that Russia can respond is general mobilization. If they do that, they're gonna be numerically on equal grounds, and the equipment is obviously going to be tilted towards Ukraine as things go slower and longer. So I wouldn't bet on Russia, is what I'm saying, in this war for sure.
Yeah. Just an interesting side note about what you just said about professional versus conscript army. I was listening, I think, or reading, no, listening to a video recently, I think by a U.S. Army or U.S. Marine veteran. And basically, I think they were talking about the survivability of units in Vietnam during Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And it went like I think first 4 weeks were the worst. Like you had the most casualties. And after that, after the troops gained, operational experience, it just dropped dramatically, right? The casualty rate. So what I'm saying is it jives with what you're saying. It's battlefield experiences gained quickly and with high morale. Um, I suppose that's that helps a lot, and of course not not being devastated in your first engagements. So
Yeah, the morale is the key factor here. It really is. It's not so much the equipment. Although the Russian equipment looks great, but it actually sucks. It's super cheap. It's that the food that they eat, the equipment, the feel of the equipment, all of that stuff is influencing morale as well. The U.S. has scientists working on how to best create the flavors that people have at home, when they eat in whatever Iraq from MREs, because that stuff all matters. The Russians are all about, screw that. That's for pussies, Nobody needs that. You can take this, cheaply made helmet and binoculars that fall
Those are
apart when
okay
you
with
use them. Yeah,
the five fingers of death. I
yeah, exactly.
think that was a nickname for the hot dog MRE or something like that.
Yeah,
Universally hated.
yeah. The Russian MREs are among the worst in the world, so I wouldn't wanna live on that for sure. And they were all expired. Well, many of them were expired when they went in because nobody expected it to even be needed, I guess. So yeah, Azovstal is an interesting kind of event, and I think what Russia probably wanted is for these people to be as humiliated as possible and to be destroyed potentially. They weren't able to do that. So the Ukrainian narrative will prevail, which is these are heroes, they have fought until the last possible moment. And of course, people will be inspired to do this in every next, siege that happens, which was the whole idea behind us of staying there, right? So I think that that narrative won. So that's going to be the narrative for the rest of the war, and that's going to be an example that inspires people when they're under siege next time, right? They're going to fight until the last soldier because these people showed that it can be done. So good job, them, I guess. I was a little surprised that Russia didn't use anything more extreme there, but I guess they were scared of the maybe hitting, collateral damage or hitting their own soldiers and stuff. They did bomb the shit out of that plant, but the plant itself
I
is,
think they didn't have anything else. Pretty much, they used thermobaric weapons,
yeah.
but apparently the bunkers underneath Azovstal were enough to protect most of the fighters, and
Yeah,
they
they
tried.
didn't know where they are. It's more that they didn't know where
Mm,
exactly to, because
yeah,
it's like a
site
city
and
area, it's a
a lot
small
of
town.
yeah, a lot of enclosed passageways between.
Hmm.
So there was that. They used the white phosphorus. We saw the video, or at least
Yeah.
I saw the video. I don't know if you have.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
they did.
like, what else? There's chemical weapons, and then there's nukes. And
Allegedly, they
where do
used
you go?
some small scale chemical weapons as well. Allegedly,
Yeah.
there was a video by Azo, but that could have been, hysteria or whatever. Who knows? It's
Mm,
impossible to verify those things
yeah,
on the spot.
hard to say.
Yeah, you could
Uh,
always use nukes,
but
but they wouldn't be more effective than the thermobaric weapons.
yeah,
So
less
it's
environment for
been
sure.
pointless. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, on a lighter note, they were called Four Fingers of Death.
Hmm.
Uh,
Four fingers.
Frankfurters from 1982. Shout out to Steve 1989 MR Info, one of the best YouTube channels ever.
There's a cool Russian YouTuber who's also sampling this. He kind of dresses up as a soldier and goes to a forest or whatever, and then just drinks beer with his buddies, and then just eats all this crap. So he was it's I think he's kind of patriotic, I guess, but his estimate of the Russian MRE was pretty crappy. And he loved the Ukrainian one, and that was a scandal. I remember that being a thing like 5 years ago, because the Ukrainian MRE was kind of, was just better, I guess, at that point. But nothing can match the US one. The US MREs are amazing. There's so many of them. First of all, you get like, spaghetti with meatballs and, things like that. And the Russian one is like, okay, this powder is the tea. And then you have like, canned meat and a candle to warm it up in the can and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's not super advanced. So,
All
let's
right, so
talk.
lots of off-the-shelf stuff. I mean, since we're sidetracked already, why not?
Yeah, the Russians have a ton of. Yeah, the Russian MRE has a ton of just off the shelf like tea bags and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. What about American?
Uh,
American are designed,
I don't think you can
or
get. First of all, you can't buy them. I think it's forbidden to. I think it's against the law to sell them or whatever. But You can, I think you can still get them in some way. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the American. I'm sure that the Russians don't allow their MREs to be sold, but the US ones have, they have like little Tabasco bottles. So they like teeny tiny cute Tabasco bottles. So obviously that was manufactured for the MRE specifically. Um, I'm not sure if you can get the stuff elsewhere. Like I'm sure that there are companies. There's a bunch of preppers and survivalists and stuff that probably do the same level of stuff that you can get. So if you're into that kind of stuff, or you can just get those those people who prepare for the rapture and they buy those like $10,000 worth of macaroni and cheese in buckets. And then you just put those buckets and you can like, hey, look, you can make a table out of these, like chairs and stuff.
How much did what's his name? Alex Jones like made like 100 million out of
Oh
those.
yeah, he was big in he was big in stuff, but not just him. I think there were pastors and stuff. I think there was um, I remember a guy selling those buckets in particular. Let me Google for that real quick. Bucket. I'm not sure how we got here, but buckets pastor. Buckets pastor. I think I'm gonna Jim Baker. Okay, you see, buckets pastor. It works. So here it is. Uh, here
Welcome to
they
the
are.
preeminent political channel, and where we discuss MREs and
Tasty
for
pantry.
for all your post-apocalypse needs.
Yep. So this is it.
Okay, well,
New bulk sampler, but 28 total buckets. Okay. So yeah. So buckets pastor is a thing. Yeah. I'm not sure if this is the guy who was anti-gay and turned out to be gay, or is it the other? Or maybe I'm confusing. There's a lot of them with that thing, so I think it's one of these. I'm not sure. Jim Baker. I guess I can Google
he's
Jim
mostly
Baker.
crazy, but every once in a while he
Baker
does
gay.
something decent.
His son is gay. Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah. So, yes. So I didn't confuse him. Because of course he is. Okay. So since my camera already died, I think we can go a little bit over time and talk about the journalist killing in Palestine. How's that for a transition from buckets? So I was unfamiliar with this story a little bit before you sent it, and so my understanding is that this was a journalist that was she has died from a gunshot wound, and initially the Israelis said it's the Palestinians, and then the evidence showed, I guess, that it wasn't, and it seems to be very likely that she was killed by the Israelis by a, my understanding is sniper fire, right?
Yeah,
Sniper shot to the head that went past her helmet, I guess, near the ear. So
under the
under
helmet.
the helmet,
I think
okay.
it hit her under
Hmm.
the ear.
Yeah, so she was
Um,
basically dead on the spot, right?
yeah, basically, yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I was just gonna say a couple of things in regards to the sad news. Um, First of all, first issue, there's a huge problem with accountability in the Israeli army. There's lots of these cases fully documented, some involving foreigners working as aid
Mm-hmm.
workers, others with Palestinians, where people are repeatedly being uh, deliberately targeted.
Mm-hmm.
People who are wearing high visibility clothing, who are
Yeah, she had the press thing, right? On
depending
the.
on. Oh yeah, she
Mm-hmm.
had a blue press like a jacket, and she wore a helmet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's highly unlikely that she would be confused for a combatant of any kind, right? And
Yeah, I guess it's possible from
all
the
of these
side or something. Yeah.
a
I
lot of
mean,
these
I don't
live
know.
fire incidents are also happening during confrontations which don't involve like armed forces on the Palestinian side, for
Mm-hmm.
example, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it happens when there's some kind of a protest, when there's a mob. People may be armed with slings, right? But not with
Yeah.
actual firearms, not wearing uniforms. Therefore, somebody who's like in this kind of an attire stands out even more, right? I haven't seen the videos from the event, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but all I want to say this my observation, and I think something that would be corroborated if you looked at Amnesty International reporting over the years. I also sometimes check up on B'Tselem, which is an Israeli human rights organization. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so problem number one, huge lack of accountability within Israeli army that as a as a and the fact again whether this is intentional or not basically produces a sense of how do you call it uh, basically the soldiers don't feel like they need to treat whoever they are engaging with as as human beings essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Um, another thing, uh, okay, actually I lost it now. Maybe you wanna comment while I try and remember what was the other thing I wanted to say here.
Yeah, my understanding is that Israel handled the communications really poorly. Like they sucked at the initial. They said that, oh, sure, it's Palestinians, we have evidence, and then it turned out it's not at all. The video they showed was hundreds of meters away from the actual spot. So then they said, okay, it's quite possible it's us, and so it was a mess from in terms of just PR and handling the communications. It seems they didn't handle it well.
Well,
As
here's the thing. Here's the thing about that. I don't know if you are following these type of news I have, like the Israel and Palestine have been a thing that I've been interested in for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, the thing is, if you look at Western media, they often basically just report IDF's press releases as statements of fact, right?
Yeah.
So they
Oh.
don't treat IDF as a belligerent side,
Mhm.
rather they treat it as basically a formal, which it is, formal government body, but it's also a belligerent, right? And
Yeah,
therefore,
I can understand where the bias
I
comes from because they're lazy, right? They're just
yeah,
they're no.
possibly also laziness, but that's a different story that we
Mhm.
can talk about. Now, these days, we also have to be extra careful because of, all of the conspiracy theories. So it's really easy to step on landmines that I would particularly want to step on. But yeah, I think this is just a pattern of, this, they would have gotten away with this in the past if the person wasn't such a high profile
Mhm.
journalist,
Mhm.
right? Al
Mhm.
Jazeera is a global brand.
Yeah.
And I think the only reason why this is making it into top news is because the journalist worked for Al Jazeera. If it was some
Mhm.
sort of a smaller outlet, some regional outlet, nobody would know, nobody would care.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, globally, right?
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah,
And
it'd just be local news. Yeah.
yeah, And the other thing that I just wanted to touch upon in my commentary, yet again, we can see that this reporting tends, it seems like the wording seems to be edited for some reason. I don't know why, as a matter of policy, as a matter of what, but these things are written in passive, you know. So like a journalist died in
Hmm.
Palestine or in Jerusalem or wherever, rather than was shot and killed, right? Which is the correct description of. Obviously, both statements are true,
Hmm.
but one is much softer. And for some reason, this type of representation tends to be dominant in the Western media. And again, if you took a selection of articles that talked about similar events, you wouldn't see this kind of thing happening, right? So that's another thing that's kind of annoying, to be honest, to still being observed even today.
Yeah, I mean the U.S. is clearly biased, and the U.S. does control the media, so yeah, you would expect that, sure. Um, these kinds of things happen, unfortunately, in things, when there are people with weapons involved. This doesn't seem to be useful to Israel in any way. Neither would it be useful to Palestinians. So this very likely seems to be a mistake, or if it was malicious, it was something that was done on an individual level, it seems to me. But the way it was handled sucks. Yeah, I totally agree. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the motivation of the person behind the trigger was. I'm pretty sure that in a situation like this where there wasn't any active shooting, that it would be relatively straightforward to understand who it was. So if they can't find it quickly, if Israelis can't find it quickly, it would only fuel the whole conspiracy thing around it.
Well, like I said, if history is anything to go by, IDF will do their best to shield the whoever
Yeah,
perpetrated this,
yeah.
right?
I mean, you
But
see this in
but
organizations, sure, because it's us against them, right? You see this one, when
yeah,
there's
but
a police killing,
Israel is
then the cops are trying to be less transparent if they can, right? If they feel that would be in their interest. So.
um, that's an interesting point actually, because I was gonna say, uh, you basically destroyed my point before I made it.
Okay,
I was
well,
gonna say if there was like a state of open warfare, right?
hmm.
Then where you have to have some level of leniency towards your troops because all
Yeah,
kinds of horrible things do happen on the field and you need to maintain combat effectiveness.
yeah,
But Israel is in this curious state of forever war,
yeah.
but without actually being at war.
Hmm.
But yeah, you then mentioned the case with the police forces, so that the same rules kind of apply, right?
Yeah, they
They're
react in
their own,
exactly
right?
the same thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
So that's something to think about. Yeah, I
these
was
organizations
going
react.
a bit
It's
more.
just I think it's animalistic, right? It's our team, and then we kind of take care of each other. Thin blue line, blah blah blah. So yeah.
But I think
Um,
it also depends on like what kind of culture is maintained within a particular team. Like I think
mm,
in especially in American policing, there is a very strong us versus them element.
sure, yeah,
Like
of
us,
course.
the police, versus everybody out there.
Yeah, but I mean, you have
That
to.
may not. Mhm. Yeah, but that
As
may
a
not
U.S. cop,
necessarily work.
you have to have that mentality. I mean, it's really hard not to have it, just because of the whole
Yeah.
setup and the in the UK. I think I mean, they're doing a good job from one side, but from the other side, you have really ugly things happening too. So I don't know how well that would apply to the United States. In the United States, you have this fact of just having weapons on the ground, right? So there's not much you can do about it, especially there's not much you can do about it being a cop, right? That you're just given the situation. So, good luck with community policing and stuff, if a guy can have an AK in his car and.
Yeah.
So it kind of becomes us versus them, right? Because that's what it is. It's pretty hard to avoid that. And then when you have that, people just intuitively try to cover each other and support each other, whatever. Yeah.
I don't know. I'd like to think that I would act as some sort of a maverick in the situation, but I'm not sure. Like, it's
Yeah.
not easy to be.
Sure, you would be the like in the movies, right? You would.
No, not necessarily in the movies, but like for example, Hugh Thompson, the guy who evacuated civilians, during My Lai
Oh yeah,
massacre.
the only guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's
Yeah.
people like this, but they're a
hmm
rarity. Like I said, I would like to think that maybe I would be, but you never know until you come into the situation. So
You wouldn't be picked for Vietnam, of course, because you're a commie, so they would just filter you out.
yeah, that's a good point.
Nice try, though. Yeah. Okay, so let's maybe wrap up with Finland and Sweden and NATO, right? I'll talk about two. And there is this statement by Turkey, basically expressing concern, right, about the membership. But I think most people don't really understand this. Don't know the background and don't know the rationale and stuff. And there was also Putin's very funny statement that not against Finland and Sweden joining NATO, but if they put strategic missiles or whatever on the territory, then we will respond with technical military terms. And one of these guys I was
That's
talking about,
embarrassing.
one of these guys I was talking
Just
about
embarrassing at this point.
earlier, who's expressing doubts about Putin, and he's saying, "Okay, where are these technical military means? We keep hearing about them. What are they exactly? Can we see them? Maybe? Can you show it? Can you show them to us? What are they?" And that's pretty funny. I mean, that's totally toothless. Putin has. First of all, this just shows the absurdity of the arguments that if Ukraine joins, then it's over. It's the end of the world, and then he's causing two countries to join NATO, expanding NATO on his borders, and he's well, okay, we're gonna be really angry. So that's pretty funny, and it's
Absurd at this point. Yeah.
yeah. I hope this helps destroy the myth of Putin the great strategist, Putin the great mastermind. Especially especially people in the United States really love good villains, and Putin seems to fit the role really well, and he enjoys that for sure. So he really likes to be this mysterious, super smart, ultra brain figure who's thinking 5 steps ahead. And this is not even chess. This is playing checkers maybe because there's an action and a response, right? It's not even chess. So, not really a great chess player is what I'm saying. Um,
I
I
think
speak.
what happened to him is, probably what happens to a lot of powerful people. Too many yes men around you, you start to believe your own.
Yeah, sure.
It smells, even smells like perfume, and
Mm,
yeah, you start making really bad decisions based off of that belief.
yeah.
Um, so yeah,
So this is gonna go through. I think today, Finland, Finland's parliament, I think, voted. So yeah, it's pretty much a done
yeah,
deal. Even if they don't join immediately, they're going to be covered by countries like France, I think, offer direct support, like in the meantime, the United Kingdom. So, yeah, it's not, this is going to
yeah, they're
happen. And
definitely
yeah,
members, though. Yeah.
I think what Erdogan from Turkey is trying to gain here, first of all, why he's against this is because of the Kurdish, um, um, well, he would call them terrorists, right? That Finland is sheltering, supporting, sheltering. So that's his beef, and I don't think he thinks that it's gonna be that he's gonna gain anything from Finland directly. He's probably just trying to get some. He's trying to get some, something for him, for Turkey, for himself, out of this situation because his vote matters. I think it's just a matter of
Yeah.
that because
Well,
Turkey was kind of supportive of expansion before, so I have no reason to believe that he would change that just because of this
just
particular
for
thing.
context, Turkey has been basically in the grips of a pretty nasty economic crisis.
Yeah.
Their currency has been in free fall.
Hmm.
I've been to Turkey last year. Everything was incredibly cheap because I get
Hmm.
paid in euros, and when I converted money, I had like almost twice as much as expected. But yeah, there it bred a lot of dissent, I think, among the people.
Hmm.
They're not. I think. I think Erdogan is doing this basically to try and shore up support in the population, which is probably slipping, primarily because of the economic issues that
Hmm.
the country is facing right now. Kurds are always the convenient scapegoat, so
Yeah.
if you can point at Kurds somewhere and you say there they are,
Yeah.
that was usually enough. We'll see if it is this time, but yeah.
Yeah. So just overall, this is a done deal, and this expands NATO even more. um, I don't think. Obviously, I mean, Putin's is not going to do anything about this, and if he does, I mean, if in the unlikely case he would attack, yeah, I think he moved some Iskander missiles back and forth. Like, here, look at these missiles, something like that. But if he's actually crazy and goes and tries to attack, Finland, first of all, good luck with that. Finland would kick his ass. When he's tied up with Ukraine, I think Finland would be harder, arguably, to handle than Ukraine because of the NATO support they would have. But even without the NATO support, it would be a nightmare. And I think there would be NATO response, whether Finland is formally in NATO or not. I think there would be reaction for sure, and even more with Sweden. So yeah, so good luck with that. That's not going to happen. So what? Yeah, so this is just a stupid backfire that happened because you're not supposed to invade countries. I guess. I mean, that's the conclusion. That's the moral of the story. Don't invade countries if you don't want alliances against you to grow, which is exactly what happened here.
Hopefully lesson for the future and the deterrent.
Something tells me
Just
he's not gonna find this useful, but maybe somebody else. Yeah, maybe.
no, I don't mean Putin or Russia. I mean
Yeah.
in general. It would
Oh.
be really nice if we could finally start applying the standard that this kind of stuff isn't okay.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with China. Of course, everybody's watching that.
Yeah, Taiwan.
Yeah. So I guess we can wrap it up. Enjoying the conversation with you as always. We can talk about it in politics some other time. It seems that's uh that's an inexhaustible source of disagreement. So I guess that's good. But maybe we should go and debate some people about it. That'll be fun.
Or at
So
least
yeah,
make it a bit more planned. I think we started on a particular topic and then went off rails immediately.
no, we could always go
About
to
it.
buckets. We could talk to we could talk about buckets a lot. That's a good subject, right? You can make tables and chairs. And you can get different flavors.
Actually, here's a funny story, right? Back in Greece, we used to go out and do movie nights at home. So I'd go out and
Mhm.
buy like a plastic bucket of popcorn,
Uh-huh.
and it always felt like a shame to just throw it away. So I have something somewhere like 15 or 20 stacked on my balcony that was kind of
Shit.
like a DIY project
There
that
you
I'm gonna
go.
convert. Yeah, I'm gonna make it totally. I'm gonna make it into something functional someday, right?
There you
For
go.
sure. Yeah. So
Buckets.
buckets.
Yeah. The moral of today's stream is buckets. They're super useful. Also, you can eat stuff from them. But yeah, maybe we should get the sponsor, right?
Yeah.
I have a feeling we understand who's the sponsor gonna be. So
You're gonna call or should I?
buckets. I think Birch Gold will come to us next, and then it's gonna be all downhill from there. So okay, well, nice talking to you, and I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Sorry about the distraction behind me. It affected my thinking process a few times, but what can you do?
Not at all. Not at all. Vladan lost this debate, so that's gonna be the comment. Take care, man.
Okay. Cheers, you too.